Hey, Paul Rabalais here in part 5 of 6 parts of how a single or unmarried person protects their assets from nursing home expenses and qualifies for long-term care Medicaid. All right, so I'm excited that we're winding down our 6-part series on how a single unmarried person protects their assets from nursing home expenses. This is part 5. Part 1 was the big picture. Part 2 was that inventory of assets and income. Part 3, where the assets get transferred to. Part 4 was the transfer of assets. Here's part 5. Maintaining your plan. Part 6, the final part in our next video, will be the application for Medicaid. So going back to part 5, maintaining your plan is important because when you plan ahead to qualify for Medicaid and protect what you have, you're going to take some action and then some years are going to go by, primarily because of this 5-year penalty period for transferring assets. So you're going to put some things in place, many years are going to go by, and then maybe you go to a nursing home and the assets are protected and you qualify for Medicaid. So since there's a number of years that are going to go by, we need to talk about what happens during those years. Let me talk about some things that you need to watch out for. So sometimes during that, kind of time period while the 5-year clock is ticking, some people will acquire new assets. Either they'll have monthly income that they're not spending, so they accumulate money in their bank accounts. Maybe they inherit something. So when someone acquires additional assets in their name, a decision has to be made. Do I keep those assets in my name, knowing that I'd have to spend or deplete those if I go to a nursing home in the future? Or is the thinking, I've acquired some new assets, let me go ahead and transfer those as well, start a new 5-year time period or penalty period for those specific assets. So those are some things we need to watch out for. Another thing you need to look out for is monitoring your health. If you start this while you're young and healthy, and maybe let's say you start this process at age 65 and you're in good health, well, you've got more time you're likely to have more time on your side than someone who starts this process at 75 or 80. So, with long-term care, some people and some families can kind of see it coming. Maybe it's a dementia Alzheimer's thing. Maybe it's a severe arthritis that turns into a severe arthritis thing. So monitoring the health will indicate to families how aggressive or how quickly they need to get assets out of the potential Medicaid applicant's name. Another issue we have to deal with is, let's say someone does transfer assets to a very particular type of trust in order to get them out of their name. And then at some point after they're transferred to the trust, those assets need to be sold. The mistake sometimes people make is, for some reason, when those assets need to be sold, they take the assets out of the trust, put them back into the name of the transferor, who then sells those assets and then has the proceeds of that sale still in their name. So when you've transferred assets to a trust, and whether that's a home or whether it's a piece of real estate or whether it's some shares of stock, and for whatever reason those assets need to be sold, then just have the trust sell the assets and within the trust. So it doesn't start any kind of new 5-year period. You're just, you started the 5-year period when you transferred an asset to a trust. When you just sell the asset within the trust, that doesn't create any new penalty period. So when transferred assets need to be sold, sell them in the same name or trust that they were transferred to. Another thing that typically needs to be monitored is your IRA. And maybe you didn't transfer your IRA out of your name. At best, perhaps you may have started to take some distributions from your IRA, paid income tax, and then transferred after-tax resources to other individuals or to a trust. So some people who engage in this type of planning, they keep some or all of their IRA in their name, and that needs to be monitored while the plan is in existence. What are the income tax rates? What are your required distributions? Do you want to take more than the required distributions, pay the income tax, then transfer the after-tax proceeds out of your name? Does your health, good or bad, affect that decision? So monitoring the IRA is another important factor that comes into maintaining the plan. Another thing that you need to monitor, because this needs to be monitored for many years, is whether the rules have changed. Sometimes Congress and the states change the rules. Now, the 5-year penalty period for transferring resources, that went into effect on February 8th of 2006. So it's been many years since they changed that. Before that, it was this combination 5-year, 3-year rule. Before that, 3 years. Before that, 2.5 years. So we got to keep an eye on what the rules are in case they change once you've put a program in place to protect what you have. But then I think the bottom line is just don't use the transferred assets as your own bank account. If you've transferred assets to others, if you've transferred assets to a trust for others to get it when you pass away, don't just use that as your money. Yes, there's a way you can get that back if you need it to spend it, but I think people get in trouble when they transfer assets out of their name. So in form, those assets have been transferred, but in substance, they just continue to use those assets as their own. And so that doesn't look good. And really it doesn't follow what you were trying to do to begin with. So that goes back to my part 4 discussion about keeping some assets in your name, even more than the limit, just in case you need some for emergency purposes. Okay, so real important that you do hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you won't miss anything. There's an arrow share button. If you know someone, or if you know someone whose parents could benefit from this information, share it. I would appreciate that. That would be awesome. Got one more part in this 6-part series to go. We'll see you next time.